back. Knocking out the Washington establishment with infallible logic and reason. This show is like holy water to the money-sucking vampires in government. They can be defeated. This show, combined with your effort, there we go. We can bring that about, working together. Let's put it that way. It's only a matter of time and pressure. Welcome back here to the Patrick Riggin Show on the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network and locally on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. Every commercial break, it seems like I get things popping into my mind that I want to talk about. Something I've forgotten during the previous segment, or a new take on an issue, and it really wreaks havoc with the notes I make during show prep. But hey, that's what makes it fun, right? And if I don't get to something during the show, I usually try to get it posted on our Facebook page at facebook.com/Patrick Riggin Show. That's facebook.com/Patrick Riggin Show altogether. And you don't have to be a member of Facebook to read that page. Just type that web address in and ignore all that sign-up stuff that pops up. But thinking about Obamacare and the shutdown during the break, I've been hearing all these people in government, well, I guess out of government too, but when I hear them talking about Obamacare, they keep chanting, "It's the law, it's the law." It's almost like they're in a cult or something. But that's the new talking point now, or actually the old talking point. Obamacare is the law, as if that means everything's okay. No, it's not the law, because it violates the Constitution. But Patrick, the Supreme Court said it was constitutional. Despite what you've been taught, the Supreme Court is not the final say on the Constitution. We are, the citizens of the United States. We are the ones who are on the other side of this equation. The government gets its power from us. We give it permission to do certain things, and only those things. It's not the other way around. The citizens have all the rights, all the power, all the permissions to do whatever we want, as long as we aren't infringing on someone else's rights. The government is given certain defined and limited permissions to do things we assign it to do. That's it. If the government does something outside those permissions, then it's acting outside the law, outside the bounds we placed on it. And if it's doing that, then technically, should you be bound to it? Look, the government isn't a thing. You can't point to something and say, there's government. That's government. You can point to buildings. You can point to documents. But you can't point to something and say, hey, there's government right there. You can point to people. You can point to someone and say, hey, there's Patrick. I'm a human being. You're a human being. You can even point to animals and houses, mountains and trees, any of those, and say, there it is. With government, you can't do that, because government isn't a thing. It's an idea. It's an agreement among a group of people to give some of their power to another set of people to act as, well, their emissaries, as their ambassador. Our set of rules for our government is the Constitution. We as citizens agree to allow these other people to act for us in certain areas of our lives, as long as they abide by the rules laid out. If they start acting outside those rules, then those people are violating the agreement we had with them. So how can we be bound by the set of rules if the other party isn't going to obey them? If we agree that you're going to mow my lawn for $50, you can't trim the hedges and then charge me an extra $50 for that too. I didn't agree to that. I only agreed to pay you for mowing the lawn. You can't say, well, I decided you needed those hedges trimmed, so I went ahead and cut them, so you owe me that extra $50. No, you acted outside our agreement, so I'm not bound by whatever extra you do. Making that same argument, if the government acts outside the agreement we have with it, that being the Constitution, then am I bound by whatever law it passes? Technically, no, I'm not. It is acting outside the bounds of our agreement. But Patrick, the Supreme Court, you're forgetting about that. No, I'm not. The Supreme Court was created by the same Constitution that created the Congress and the presidency. So let's say in our agreement to mow my yard, we also agree that one of your employees is going to determine whether what you do is within our contract or not. Do you see where this is going? We create a contract to mow my yard. It states that all you'll do is mow my yard, and in return, I'll pay you $50. Now, when you trim my hedges and say that's included in this contract and I owe you another $50, the person who gets to decide who is right, hey, they also work for you. Does that sound like I'll get a fair hearing? Possibly. But their paycheck is signed by you, not me. If they say I owe you that extra $50 for trimming the hedges, they know they might get some extra money as well. Would you sign that contract if that was the case? Well, of course not. You would say, I'll give you $50 to mow my yard. If I said, what if there's a dispute about what I'm supposed to do? Who will decide who is right? You'll say, there is no dispute. Mow my yard and that's it. This is what's happening in our country today. We have an out-of-control government acting outside the bounds of the Constitution, the agreement we all have. And when we think the government is doing something outside the rules outlined in that document, we have to go to another government employee, in this case the Supreme Court, to decide who is right. Someone who's getting paid by the same government we have a problem with. So are we surprised when this government employee rules in favor of the people signing their paycheck? This is what Thomas Jefferson warned us about. He wrote, quote, but the opinion which gives to the judges the right to decide what laws are constitutional and what not only for themselves in their own sphere of action, but for the legislature and executive also in their spheres, would make a judiciary a despotic branch. He's warning us that giving the Supreme Court the final say on whether something is constitutional or not makes it a dictator. The dictator of a the dictator of a country decides what's legal or not, what's allowed or not. The dictator is the supreme ruler of the land. If the Supreme Court were to be this final say on whether something's constitutional or not, then the Constitution would say that, but it doesn't. The people, the citizens of this nation, are the final say on whether something is constitutional. Well, why is that? Because we created it. The government didn't. The Supreme Court didn't. It was us, the citizens of this country. But we're taught all through school the Supreme Court makes the final ruling on laws. It has the final say on whether something's allowed or not. We're taught that because that's what the government wants you to think. Thomas Jefferson also stated, to consider the judges as ultimate arbiters of the constitutional questions is a very dangerous doctrine indeed. Now, I've read that quote before, but what he's emphasizing is giving the judges the final say on the Constitution is very dangerous. They don't have to answer to voters because they're appointed for life. And they're only human. They make the same mistakes we all make. They wish to make a name for themselves just like other people in office do. And they can be intimidated. Just look at Judge Roberts ruling in favor of Obamacare. Public pressure, and he changes his vote. This is how the government wants you thinking. This is how you're taught in school. The Supreme Court, these government employees, are the final arbiters of whether something is constitutional or not. That's why I say if you send your children to a school run by the government, don't expect them to be taught about freedom and liberty, because government isn't about freedom and liberty. It's about the control of a population, a country, us. All right, we're up on the last break here of the Patrick Riggin Show. It's already upon us. That sounds slightly Shakespearean, doesn't it? When we return here on the Patrick Riggin Show, we'll mop up the rest of this stuff I wanted to get to before the end of the hour. Stay tuned for an information-packed last segment.